Hey everyone, I'm going to work on this particular painting, which is an evening scene, a beautiful bright colored painting. And for this I did a lot of drawings, casual drawings, to get an idea about the composition. Here's an ink sketch, here is a sanguine sketch. But now let's discuss the palette. This is slightly unusual one because it doesn't have any red, and I'm using burnt sienna as my main red, and here is titanium white, chrome yellow hue, chrome green, burnt sienna, sap green, and Prussian blue. Now I'm working with on the drawing, and I'll be starting off with a line drawing, and I'm using only burnt sienna and Prussian blue. And I want this video to be a little bit longer so that everybody can see the process that I am following. But it's mostly, actually initially it's just the drawing, and then gradually a tonal drawing. That's what I'll be focusing on, indicating the shapes and the space that the objects are going to acquire. Now I'm mixing sort of a blackish color with Prussian blue and burnt sienna. Now I'm indicating all the darks that are there rather than the lights, and it's a toned canvas, so it creates a nice effect as well. And the benefit of doing a drawing like this with first initially line drawing and then a tonal drawing is that before you paint, your ideas are the clearest and what you want in this particular painting. Now I'm using Prussian blue and titanium white to paint the sky, and I'm using sort of a middle tone. Then gradually we'll be moving downwards towards the horizon, and we'll be warming the color up. I'm just covering the area. This is called block in, and I'm just covering the canvas with this color. Now I'm graying things up here and using burnt sienna and Prussian blue and white to create a warmish color. I'm working on the cloud section. Now I've more or less covered the sky section, so I decided to work on the ground section as well. So I'm mixing chrome green, which is a mixed color and has more yellow. So I use some Prussian blue and the burnt sienna. I'm just covering up the thing that I did up in the sky, and also doing it on the ground as well. And this is farmland, and lot of this evening light is actually glowing in there, and it was a very beautiful sight. And the long shadows of the evening and warm colors, warm yellows, warm green. It was a very beautiful effect. Covering all the areas. Now I'm going to work on the clouds, and so I'm using titanium white, slight amount of chrome yellow and burnt sienna to warm it up, but it'll basically remain whitish color, a warm white, and I'll be using very thick paint. The application is loose and pressured as well. I'm using a filbert brush, but very bad quality brush, scrubby brush, so that it creates a very good amount of abstraction, randomness. And I'm working on the lightest section so that there are no other colors that are going to pollute that, and we'll be merging it with the shadow colors as well. Using some warm colors, yellow as well as burnt sienna, creating a yellow ochre kind of a color, and we'll be merging it with the shadows, because light itself has no value until unless it has shadows to complement it. So that's what I'm doing. Until unless there are some gray areas, there won't be any value to super bright light. I'm using that filbert and using combination of blue, brown, yellow to create the gray color. I'm trying to retain the shapes as well, creating the overall shapes and also creating abstraction and avoiding any kind of situation where it would lead to a patterned shape. So we don't need patterns. This is nature that I'm painting. It has its balance, but it's not patterned. It's very random, but it is controlled by a rule. That's all. On the right hand side, I'm also merging the gray colors, the lighter gray colors with the highlights as well, and creating a juxtaposition of various colors. But I am also clear about which part is my central focal point, so I'm working on that. And also now started creating a separation between the horizon as well as the sky. Now the color palette that I am using is slightly different from my regular red, yellow and blue. And here I am using a very greenish blue. It's a Prussian blue and very powerful color, as well as titanium white. But my regular yellow is here, which is chrome yellow, and using that green color. And there is no red that has been used. I am using burnt sienna as my red. So gradually I'm moving towards using the browns most often in my landscapes rather than using any red. I don't see too much of red. I don't know why, but gradually for the last 1 year I have been using mostly browns rather than any prominent use of red, because I can get the same effect with the brown. So I think this has turned out well so far as much as we can see right now. I'm also trying to create a contrasting effect and random definitions of sharp edges as well as soft edges. I'm doing that, also creating a random pattern of the dark as well as the lighter areas, even here. I'm indicating the lighter areas on the above the cloud, upon the cloud, and The lower parts are mostly in are gray shadows. And these are highlights that I'm putting right now. Slight modifications. I wanted this to be as direct as possible, and using some blue patches here and there to bring the sky onto the clouds as well. Clouds are like very transparent sometimes they're very opaque, some areas they're very transparent, and you can see the sky through them, and that's what I'm doing. Here I've started putting some light there and trying to make the sky a little bit lighter. So I put the white and then I added some yellow to see how much, what should be the value. So now I have lightened the sky section. I'm creating some random patches with a filbert brush here and there to create some reflected light like situation. This is a very 19th century like technique. They used to have very abstracted strokes here and there to create a juxtaposition of colors. Now I'm also trying to make some changes to the cloud, and we'll be defining them gradually. I'm adding some light here and there so that it creates the random pattern, and also I'm going to add some light in the middle section so that the first contact with the viewer happens there, and then he can look at the other areas. That is like the central focal point, so it'll have more light than the other areas. Now here I'm creating an edge work, so that there is some distinction between those trees and the cloud, and adding light to create contrast is very useful. And there is a super contrast there, and as you can see. We'll be blending those two areas as I'm doing now. Now here actually I'm trying to finish the sky section before moving on to the other areas with detail and stuff like that and modeling. Here I'm trying to perfect the shapes so that they are psychologically satisfying to me. That's what I'm trying to do. And absolutely random, no plan whatsoever. I just know where the light is coming from, that's all. But all the shapes that you can see, it's totally based on the idea that everything should be as if they are scattered And that's how I do my paintings. I'm creating some distinction there, as well as blending the hard edges of the trees, and blending the distant trees a little more than those are up front. Here I'm trying to mix a light warm green color, and using a small palette knife, rounded palette knife, to heighten or lighten some of the areas that are receiving full light. And this is very interesting and creates a random pattern there. And this is a farming field, and they have sort of a carpet kind of a look, the surface of a carpet, and this is created well with a palette knife instantly. Also very useful when you have opaque color. They do not work that well with a transparent color, but I'm using opaque light as well. I'm putting it there. It creates a highlight as well as a random mark. Adding some darker shadows. Now I'm using a brush to create some sort of a scumbled mark with very thick paint, so that there are some hits and misses with the surface of the canvas. Now I'm going to mix a green with some brown, as well as the yellowish colors that I have. A sort of a warm green. I'm going to use that on the field. This is the shadow color which has been created due to perhaps an obstructive object, and I'm putting it as a very cool color as compared to a very warm field that I'm working right now. Now I'm working on the modeling part of the painting, and will be gradually focusing on the shapes and the texture of the objects. Now here stroke making becomes more important, and how you're going to put paint onto the canvas, and what stroke actually reveals what sort of shape. That is more important. I use a lot of patchy strokes. I mean, they look like patches, and somehow I find that they are very useful in that way, especially where there is a lot of abstract quality to the surface. Here I am using a dragging motion of the brush to create the shadows, as well as putting some patchy strokes to create the foliage. And these are dark shades against a very well lit section of the painting. Now I'm using that brown color that I have used and putting it as the color for a harvested farmland, and this is going to be the base color for that particular section. There it will be lighter gradually. And here too you can see I'm using a round brush and creating a very patchy effect, so that it should present a very scumbled look, the way nature is. Now I am using lighter marks. I just added some white onto it, and it became a very light warm color, and this suddenly adds something to the painting. And I'm using that color for mud onto that darker area. These are very patchy colors, but reveals the true nature of the scene that we are seeing. Now again I'm using some that warm green and creating a blended effect with those patchy strokes, and that harvested area should not look like as if it's separate from that particular field. So I'm doing that and adding some shadows in that particular area where it's not receiving light. Now I'm making the left hand side very dark because I need my concentration in the center of the painting, and other areas should be darker as if they have been obstructed due to something, and I'm putting some shadow colors there. Now I'm adding more highlight onto this particular area where there are some shrubs to divide the land, and these are catching light very well. So just random strokes and nothing more. I'm also blending the edges between shadow and the field. Now I've started adding more highlight onto those muddy areas, and this is again the same mix. It's a lighter brown color with some added white, and it will look warm. And again those patchy strokes to put the highlight. Now earlier I actually made the middle section a little bit more patchier with darker colors, and now you can see that the highlighted section is more prominent now. Again, blending that area with the green section so that it doesn't feel disconnected, and working on the shrubs again a little bit. Now I'm using the longer edge to create the shapes of the trees, and again focusing on random strokes rather than very patterned ones. And these trees are, I feel, the main attraction of this painting apart from the cloud, because the tree shapes I find very beautiful. I'm also working on the other trees that are on the left hand side. Here I'm mostly focusing on a contrast and a balance between the darker and the lighter shapes. Now I'm working on the distant tree and creating some lighter tones because it's too far away. It's one of the farthest elements in this painting, so it'll have a lot of blues and whites as well as some amount of warm colors, pinkish colors. Now I'm working on the trees and focusing very hard onto the tree shapes, so that they should have three-dimensional element as well as a nice contrast between light and shadow. And I'm also perfecting the crops. Now I'm gradually moving into the detail phase, and but still my strokes remain abstract, but the strokes remain smaller compared to what the kind of strokes that I use in the beginning. I'm adding more light, but again using the patchier strokes. Also blending some shadow areas. The trees with some more light colors. Now adding highlight, it seems, is the process of detailing, and it's very satisfying when it's working out. Otherwise, highlight without a proper placement of shadows is not going to work. The painting is going to fail. Slightly adding some points of interest as well as cooler atmospheric effects with some whitish colors, some houses in the distance, and some misty areas. This is evening and I've seen that light and mist both together. Now creating the distance here. Now I'm going to put some posts in the painting, and these are their function is to separate out the fields. This is my field and this is your field. It's like that. And these are dividers, so you shouldn't cross that particular area. And I'm going to put some highlights on top of it. These are warm highlights. Now refining the trees a little, and I find the shapes very interesting now. And this is evening light and morning and the dawn actually, and the evening. These two are the most paintable times in the day, whereas throughout the day it's mostly light. So there is no contrast, there is no beautiful color. It's just light and very little shadow. Now again mixing some lighter colors, and these will be the trunks of the trees, and these are very light and they are reflected due to very powerful sunlight, direct sunlight. And I'm going to blend the edges a little so that they merge into the trees. And here is the shot of the final painting, and I think it has turned out well, and some details here and there, and it's a nice little piece. And if you like this video, then please click the like button and also subscribe for future videos, and I'll be posting more demos and instructional videos. And thank you for watching. Take care.